our lovely village of Barnham, who we love immeasurably. Dr. John Mason dealt with the flooding. How long ago now, John?
40 years.
40 years. So I'd like John to explain what had gone on 40 years, and then I will then explain, obviously, what's gone on for the last 6 months. Thank you, John.
Do you need me to use this because of the recording, or can I dispense with it?
It doesn't matter which you do.
Right, I prefer not to use the microphone. Can everybody hear me clearly?
Oh, yes.
I have no political affiliation at all. But I've been a resident of Barnham Village, and I think I need to put inverted commas around that word now, for 40 plus years. And I've lived in the 6 villages, should that be 1 village in brackets, for 60 years. And during that entire past 40 years that I've been a resident of this village, there's been only one major and significant improvement to the drainage of this village. And that was following the 1993-94 catastrophic flood, when a lot of us campaigned for a new culvert under the railway to double the capacity of the water that can be conveyed from the north to the south side of the railway line. And a lot of us campaigned for this. The money was found. The then MP, Sir Michael Marshall, was very helpful in the House of Commons in getting the money, and the Environment Agency built that culvert. When you design a thing like this, you design it with a lifetime of, say, 1 in 100 years or 1 in 200 years. That doesn't mean that you won't get another flood like that in 200 years. It could happen the following year. But there's one big scientific problem with those designs. They assume that the climate and the rainfall pattern is not changing. They are designed looking at past climate and extreme rainfall events. And we all know, and I've seen it in the time I've lived here, those rainfall patterns are changing. So even though we do have that double capacity culvert under the railway to convey the surface water away, and there have been 2 occasions this past winter when we've been within a hair's breadth of those culverts being overwhelmed. But we haven't got there, so we should be pleased for that. But that, to my knowledge, is the only significant improvement we've had. The sewage system in this village dates from the early 1960s. And to my knowledge, although southern water have swarmed all over this village in the past 6 months, causing us massive inconvenience, to my knowledge, there's not a single thing they've done that's improved the capacity or efficiency of the system. They have merely repaired things that have fallen by the wayside and broken down. As a resident who's campaigned for things over more than 4 decades, it frustrates the hell out of me that while Southern Water were repairing the main sewer down Barnham Road and the one down the road where I live from Elm Grove and Orchard Way, they connected 2 new housing developments further up Main Road to that system, which was already inadequate 20 years ago. And it frustrates me that nobody seems able to do anything about this. Because if you look at Barnham as it was 40 years ago, I hardly recognise this area I grew up with. I don't have an opposition necessarily to extra housing. We need it. But we haven't got the infrastructure to deal with all of the extra houses. And I'm not thinking schools and doctors' surgeries and roads and public transport. I'm just thinking drainage infrastructure. The surface water infrastructure is working towards the limit. It was this winter. And the foul sewage infrastructure has been creaking for 2.5 decades and can only, in my opinion, get worse. I do not believe that the works that have been done this winter, and I'm very prepared to admit I'm wrong, is going to stop us having tankers at the end of Elm Grove every winter, or at the junction of Barnham Lane and Lake Lane every winter, or the surcharging of sewers in Farnhurst Road Recreation Ground, or down Barnham Lane from Warburton, and toilet paper in the gutters at the end of Lake Lane. I do not believe that what we have seen this winter and the Southern Water Works is going to change that. So what can we do? And you know, I don't really know. I'm sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of talking to councillors, whether they be district council or county council or parish council. Present company executive here. But no, I'm talking over 40 years when you were just a young slip of a lass. The fact is, during that time, the problems are the same, but they've not been addressed. And I wish I knew how we could address them, because the more houses we build, the worse it's going to get. And the interesting thing is that I've seen a lot of planning applications that have been appealed on the grounds they will cause flooding, and the inspector has said, this new development will not flood. But they have not considered the downstream problem that is created. An upstream development should not create a downstream problem. And that is what we're seeing, I think, in this area. And I don't just mean Barnham, it's now encompassing the whole of the catchment. Now, the catchment is the area that water drains from Fontwell, Warburton, over towards Eastergate, just past the War Memorial, and over towards Yapton. It's 9.1 square kilometres, I believe. And I remember back in 1994 giving a talk in the old Barnham Village Hall, where I said that the amount of water that flowed underneath the railway and flooded this village on New Year's Eve 1993 would fill buckets stretching from here to Hong Kong. And that amount of water is still being collected, and more, every time we get heavy rainfall. So we need action. And I don't know this, but I fear that Sue's going to say that in her time on Arun District Council, she's not really got anywhere. And I feel for you, I really do, because I'm sure you're trying your best. But we as residents have got to do something. Otherwise, we're going to be forever treading through the shite. And I don't see how we're going to get any action unless we somehow get a major improvement to the sewage infrastructure in this village, and also look at the surface water infrastructure. And there are elements to this. Behind where I live is Hedge End Wood. A lot of you will not realise that Hedge End Wood saves this village quite often because it's a holding pond. When the level rises to a certain level, Hedge End Wood floods. And all of that water doesn't go through the culverts and end up down by the trading post until the levels drop and then it drains out. Hedge End Wood needs to be maintained as a good holding pond area, which means we need to plant some more trees to draw the water out the ground in the late summer, early autumn, to allow it to hold as much water as it can, because that is a lifeline for this village. It's a small green space. A lot of people walk their dogs through it. They don't realise its importance. When it floods in the winter, they think it's an inconvenience. No, it's doing us all a favour. We must look after these little things that help. That's it. I've said all I'm going to say.
October last year, we were inundated again with sewage. Marshall Close got most of it. It bubbled up through people's homes. It flooded the playground, which has never ever been cleaned yet. There's a chamber in Marshall Close, which obviously is a mini pumping station. They've now put a new pumping station in next door to run alongside it. However, we then got the development of 200 homes, which is Tars Farm, which they cannot drain because it floods with sewage. So that is on hold. But we need to be taking on the housing numbers for this area. We cannot keep absorbing without drainage infrastructure. Now, I had a meeting with Southern Water and others. They said you cannot connect anything up to the sewer in the catchment area. But they're not a statutory consultee. And until they're made a statutory consultee, they can only offer advice. For the development of the 4,500 homes, BW, they have to put a new main in to service that, not connect it up to the sewer that they've already started connecting to in Barnham Road. The same thing will happen next year, and we know it will. So we need to up the ante and start taking on these developers, central government, to stop all of this madness in this area. And also, people must understand the geology of it all. Fontwell is on top of a chalk aquifer, which is where all your drinking water comes from. The artesian well has blown its gasket, and that is running down Fontwell Avenue. That's what that water is. It's clean, pure water. But there's too much of it due to climate change and the amount that falls on the downs. It will take 365 days for it to run down to Fontwell, 50 days for it to run through Fontwell to the well in Fontwell. So we've got even more water to come yet that hasn't already arrived. It's an amazing place where we live, the geology of it all. So we've got sewage one end of the village, and then we've got fresh water the other side. And then we've then got all the poop, pardon the pun. So we need to be doing stuff to save our village. I mean, we can't keep living like it. I mean, Barnham stank of sewage for months. Every time, wherever you went anywhere. Bearing in mind also, there's chalk streams around here. And those chalk streams, we've had 25 dead brown trout washed up that have died because of the amount of sewage that is going into the Rife system. And the Rife systems are a major river, which the EA refuse to dredge because they say it's not good for the wildlife. So it's silted up. And of course, they're all interconnected. Aldingbourne Rife, Barnham Rife, the Feltham Rife. They were all major rivers. So we need to be getting on to the EA, getting on to Southern Water, which I've got a meeting next week with, to discuss not hooking up any more homes, and fight for what we need for our villages. Barnham, Eastergate, Westergate, Aldingbourne. I mean, they were pumping out sewage on the Knighton Road because that's all connected up. So we all need to work together to do it.
What can you do to help you, sir?
What will help?
What can you do to help you?
What can you do to help me? We need to be writing. Central government, whoever it will be at that point, and writing to Arun and saying we cannot keep absorbing these 4-bedroom mansions that people want to live in. None of these homes are affordable. You need affordable homes, council homes. Exactly. No. My children, you know, I'm lucky my son lives in Barnham, but, you know, they can't afford it. You know, the likes of Rowie, when she grows up, she can't afford to buy somewhere. No, which is shocking. You know, we need to be doing it, and we need to be writing to people.
Can I add to
Yes, you can, Paul.
Sorry.
My name's Paul Ayling and I'm also a district councillor for Barnham.
So Councillor Paul Ayling, also a Green Councillor.
Green councillor, yes, Green Party councillor. The lady just asked, what can you do to help? And Sue's mentioned writing letters, which is a great thing to do. Can we include MPs, etc., but also the press? Write to the press. Say, why is the government forcing these housing figures upon us? Ask those questions. Let it be known publicly who is responsible for these housing figures that are being forced upon us. That's the way to get change, because at the moment they're denying it. They're trying to blame the district council. They're trying to blame absolutely anybody else other than themselves, and they're the ones that come up with the figures in consultation with the developers. Yeah, that's what we're up against. It's a corrupt system, basically. We need to be pointing out, if you write to the papers, you're showing them in Parliament that we're onto them. Yeah? And I think that's an important thing, because that's when they start to change, because suddenly fear kicks in when you're letting them know that we've caught them at it. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. My name's Martin Rawson. I'm a resident of Lake Lane and right at the sharp end of the flooding. I've been there for 8 years now, moved in, and it's steadily got worse where I am. 2 years ago, the flooding was so bad down the where I live, it froze over, and we had a car spin on the road, near miss, dark night. No one was injured at the time. So over the last 2 years, I've been a little bit proactive in moving things forward and trying to deal with the flooding. I know you've been out there recently, okay, and talking to a neighbour. What I have done is got in touch with the local landowners who don't want to know. There's a culvert that runs along the side of Lake Lane. It belongs to a landowner. They have not moved on emptying it at all. Now, I'm not protesting against wanting new drainage. It's about maintaining existing, because the drains are totally blocked because of this culvert. I've been in touch with West Sussex County Council, written a couple of letters. They finally came out when I registered it as a near hit, and spoke to them in January. They said, oh yes, we're going to do something, but the water is not lapping against your house, so we're going to put you on the back burner. And I said to them, right, okay, so you're going to put this on the back burner because it's not lapping my house, but someone very nearly got killed, and you're not prepared to do anything. So after that, I wrote to them again, because I didn't hear from them at all, and asked them for an action plan. I never got a reply. So I went then round with a petition to all my immediate neighbours, got 20 names, and wrote to my local MP. I wrote on the 31st of March, no answer. This week I phoned the Parliament Secretary in London, and I put it in front of them, and they said, oh, we hadn't received anything, we haven't heard anything. And they have said that they will try and see if they can do anything. So I've gone that far now, but I feel like I'm not supported. But I've already gone to the MP, okay, and nothing's materialised. And I need to know, really, is there someone, or someone can direct, like you, that can champion this cause? Yeah. Because actually, they will get my vote, because the bloke who's in the chair at the moment is doing nothing. Now, my next move is, because I've got video, I've got pictures of people walking down the centre of the road because they can't move on the pavement because of the flooding. Okay, and I've got pictures of it, video of cars going through at ridiculous speeds. Okay, and my next move is to go to the newspapers, and I will name names because I am upset by it. and I need some support.
Happy.
Okay.
We're
Now, if
happy
you're
to
happy to do
you are.
that,
Yeah.
then you're going to get all that I put in to the MP. But I need another move now because no one's listening.
We are,
Yeah.
aren't we?
And please, please, that support is there from us.
Yes, we know about the sinkholes. You've got two of them, but that's to do with the geology. Shifting sand because you're at the bottom of the Aldingbourne Raised Beach.
Is it also to do with the amount of times those huge tankers were going up and down to use Lake Lane to go and dump it and Ford?
You can't prove this.
Because they're so
Can't
heavy.
prove this. Obviously, there's no scientific things to say. Yeah, that's definitely
weight
what's doing it.
limits.
But
But
that
there
amount
is
of
shifting
weight on
sand.
that regular basis is not going to help because
Yeah.
Of
the drain is supported by sand. So the more weight of movement over it. I work in the construction industry. I've done for years.
Yeah.
That is going to have some effect. We can't say how much it's contributed, but it's going to affect it.
I canvassed quite a few people in the last week, and one neighbour that I'd never met before, but he told me in great detail about the geology. He used to be involved in highways with West Sussex. For 18 years he was in charge of it apparently, and he was saying that it's 2 feet down the shifting sands that the basis of everything is. His own sewer from his house into the mains in Park Road has broken 3 times where the sand's been washed away underneath it. And the same thing is happening as it's all going out into Lake Lane, and that's what's causing all the, they can't really do anything about it unless they completely rebuild the road. Southern Water, who's been in contact with on many occasions, have said they sympathise, but they can't do anything about it because they're legally obliged to connect all new developments to the main.
Thank you. It's on.
Thanks, Sue. Yes, conversation's moved on a little bit. Actually, I was going to back up what Paul was saying earlier, but responding to what's just been said as well. I think it's really just shows how important it is for people to be aware of contacting your councillors, because they are there. They've been elected by you to be helping you. So great. I think we need probably to have more of these kind of meetings where people can come along, and if it's about landowners who are not doing what they should be doing, there are ways that you take it a bit higher and they will take a bit more notice. So that's one good thing that could come out of this. But I was going to go back slightly more strategic, back to what Paul was saying, what Sue was saying. We've got this thing called the local plan. You've probably all heard about it. It's what the district council are forced to do by the system, which comes from central government. And we've got this absolutely farcical situation where central government tells the district council that they've got to build so many houses. The local MP then condemns the district council for saying they're going to build these houses, which they are forced to build. People sometimes say, oh, but you don't have to build them. But if you don't build them, the government send in their inspectors to build them for you. They will not accept fewer numbers or no housing. But we have got to the point now, I mean, this is what's been going on. I beat my head on a brick wall over this for 4 years until I had to have a break. I am an ex-councillor, so I speak with... Yeah. So, no, but it was fascinating. I've learned a massive amount from my time trying to help you all with this kind of thing. I've learned a lot about the legal and the kind of overarching structure that we're forced to kind of, we'd all love to say, oh, rubbish, let's just get rid of it all, let's just But it's so interesting when you know how these things have come about because of the idiotic, lack of sensible planning, and that's too much to go into now. But there is possibly, with this latest winter, and obviously as Greens we're terribly aware of climate change. I'm afraid it is catching up with us now. Whatever you think about it, you're seeing it around you. You have got now a stronger and stronger case for putting some kind of moratorium on the building. We've got to get to the point where we can prove that we've got to halt it until the infrastructure's been put in, and that's important to get into the local plan. So our current councillors are working on the local plan. I think we might have, is Steve? Steve will probably have a word in a minute because he's very actively involved with it. But it's important that you've got the whole of Arun, and the housing's got to go somewhere. So it's important, and everybody will be saying the same thing. Oh, we can't put it here. So it's about planning sensibly and not having the MP blaming the council, etc. We've got to. It's correct that we need to write to people, but it's been tried, and you get letters back saying, well, this is so-and-so's fault, and this is so-and-so's fault. So it's really great. Meetings like this raise awareness, people come along, they learn more about it, and we can all respond to the local plan consultation, which is actually out now. So it's worth just following what's happening in your council. Just go online and look at the website and fill in the questionnaires and things. And I'll now hand over to Steve, who will say what's happening really currently, I think.
Thanks. I think also you need to remember we have the constraints of the sea one side and the South Hants National Park the other, which is totally different for planning. So we have this corridor, that's where they're building. Steve.
I was about to before you shouted at me, Faye, yes. So, my name's Stephen McAuliffe. I'm an Arun District Green Councillor. I'm the Councillor for Arundel and Warburton. I'm also the parliamentary candidate for Arundel and South Downs in the upcoming general election, whenever that may be. Now, John, you teed me up quite nicely when you said, but we don't know what to do about it. There are some things we can do about it, and they need to be done at the national level, and this should be championed by whichever MP happens to be serving the community. If you have picked up one of these, you will see written on there, one of the central tenets, one of the big pillars of my campaign is going to be water company reform. Okay? And that means, as Sue has alluded to, making them a statutory consultee. Combined with that, and this is really important, if they're a statutory consultee, then the planning authority will ask them for their opinion. Now, we can make it the case that the water companies have to provide evidence if they say, yes, it's okay, you can connect to my network, we have this treatment capacity at the sewage works, we have the network capacity in the sewers, they should be forced to prove that. Because we know that they are sending back comments from the planning department and they're saying, yes, we have capacity. But we know there isn't capacity. We know from the spill data, we know from walking along Barnham Lane and Barnham Road that they are continually, regularly spilling sewage to public space. Now we know that and it's on their records. Therefore, if they have to provide evidence that the sewer network can take the additional buildings, the additional houses, then they're going to have a difficult time saying, yes, it's fine. So that's a very simple, quick thing that can be done at the national level through policy to make water companies more accountable. Statutory consultees. The other thing that we can do, and this hits water companies in the pockets, they're private companies. They look at profit, they look at shareholder dividends. What we can do, because the technology is available now, it never used to be in the past, but now it is. The technology at the end of every pipe that Southern Water own, or whatever water company you happen to be with, can be monitored. It can be monitored in real time for various things that come out of the end of that pipe. Now, every pipe owned by a water company has what's called a discharge consent. That's given to them by the Environment Agency. And that discharge consent gives them the ability to discharge treated sewage as long as it falls below certain levels of pollutant. Things like ammonia, phosphate, organic matter, suspended solids. If they fail to meet that criteria, the technology is now available in real time for us to know that. And we can introduce a levy for every litre they discharge to a river or a stream or the sea. We can introduce a levy on that non-compliant discharge. Again, that's a policy decision. Government can do that. They're choosing not to. So we can change that. But we need a strong green voice in the conversation in Parliament to make that happen. Coming back to what we said about doing things locally, riparian ownership, ditches. Who mentioned ditches? Yeah, okay. The landowners. Every landowner that's next to a ditch or a river or a stream has the responsibility to ensure that the passage of water goes along that stream. Okay, so if it's silted up, they have ownership to the midpoint. Then the person on the opposite side of the river takes over. But it's in legislation and you can point it out, it's very simple. Where trees are growing in these ditches, you know, that's a big problem. The problem is there's no enforcement. That exists, that legislation exists, that requirement exists on landowners, but it's not being enforced. And this is where myself, Sue, Paul, Mel, all of us on the green side of the chamber at Arun fought quite hard to get this flood forum set up. So we can get the Environment Agency, the water companies, and hopefully landowners in the future, into the same room, talking, discussing, understanding the problems, and understanding how we can all play a part in resolving those problems. It's not about shouting and pointing fingers, because everybody's got a part to play, and we need to get consensus. Now, we can talk with landowners, and we can introduce a system, or use the existing system, that says, we're going to charge back, we're going to do the work. Your vegetation, if it's trees, for example, all of us here, if we have our hedges overgrowing the public footpath, we can get a letter from the local authority, and they'll say, we're going to cut your hedge back if you don't, but we're going to charge you for it. We can do the same with landowners. We just haven't done it yet. And this is what we are trying to do, to make that happen, make the officers go down that route of better enforcement. One final thing, there's a thing called self-help. All of us in the parishes know the problem points, the pinch points in the system, the ditches that are silted up, where the culverts don't work, where the ditches are overgrown. We do have the option of doing these things ourselves. We have money from council taxes. We may not want to do it, but we could. We have money from the council tax precept, we have money from SIL, we can get hold of money. Organising it is a different matter. We did this in Arundel. All the ditches around Arundel were completely silted up. And we mapped, so I say we, not me. It was mapped where all the problems were. And then they were cleared, working with the landowners and local people. We have to understand that there are things that we can do ourselves if we really want to do it. It's a choice, but we can do it. So the very first thing we need to do is probably map all of these problems where we know they exist. So then we can approach the landowners as a first point of call, because it's their responsibility. But if they don't, then we can decide, you know what, okay, we are going to use some of our council tax money to do that. It's an option. But there are things that we can do. Oh, we're trying.
Sorry, before you go on there, if we just look at the roads, and the gullies that are there, those gullies are full 90% of the time. Like every 7 gullies you count, 5 of them are going to be full to the top.
Mm-hmm.
I got hold of West Sussex Council and asked them about it, and they said, oh, it's done on a cyclic collection or cyclic cleaning between 6 weeks and 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years? I'm burning up 3 times each. in 2 years about the same thing.
Yeah.
And I've also asked them which zone we're in. And mainly have been quiet.
Yeah.
I think the company knows that I've asked already. I've shown the letters I've got. But if we can't get support on the gully, we're not going to get support on anything else, because clear those guns out, get them out being used properly, which they should be, because that's where the road water goes into primarily, and then out from there. But if we can't get off the road into those in an appropriate way, we're perfect.
You're absolutely right, but this is the point. We know where those points are,
Yeah.
and we can get the money from West Sussex County Council to do something about it. Operation Watershed money gives us that possibility. So we can do it. We just need to be organised about it, and let the rifes and the streams and the ditches get them flowing. You know, the legislation is there. We just need to use it better.
Recently, the authorities that are in charge of our waste disposal brought in a appointments system at the amenity tips. The week it came in, our ditches that we've been talking about have just suddenly been a target for fly tippers, because you know, it's all very well clearing the silt out, but when there's someone throwing people's rubbish into it, that's another issue. I'd dearly like to understand what the need for that appointment system was.
Sorry, I don't know the answer to that, why they've brought that system in. Efficiency, apparently, but obviously it works against us, doesn't it? And it's West Sussex. What I wanted to say, in answer to what you're saying, that we're on a cleaning cycle of, what did you say, between so many weeks and 4 years?
6 weeks and 4 years.
6 weeks and 4 years.
And they won't tell you when.
No.
And they don't know when. At the beginning of this evening, we talked about the policing, etc., and the conversation went on to austerity and the cuts to services that have caused many of those problems, youth services. It's exactly the same. The cuts to councils who would have had more funding to do this cleansing work in the past, they haven't got the money. That's why they've made it now up to 4 years wait, because they are trying to save money. I think, as Steve has just answered that question, that people got together and did it themselves, which I believe is wonderful, but I don't believe we should be having to do it, and I believe that our taxes should be paying for it to be done. Our taxes are being taken elsewhere at the moment.
Do we know how much Arun District Council tax has been taken, or the cuts? Do we know anything about the numbers in terms of the cuts over the last 14 years?
Of the percentage of cuts?
Yeah. So money used to come from central government into local governments. Do we know the extent to which that has been cut?
Initially it was 40%, but there's been 3 more cuts since then. So I don't know exactly the total, but we know that.
So councils aren't getting any money from central government, which they used to get, so they cannot provide the services that they used to provide before. No. And that is why everything looks broken.
Yes. Well, that's what I make all the savings.
The highway gully situation is an interesting one, because when I first moved to the village, they would clear the gullies regularly, and that slowly became less and less frequent. And there was one day I sat and chatted to one of the guys with the lorry who was cleaning out the highway drain, and I said, you know, you seem to be from Swansea in South Wales. He said, oh yes, he said, we've got the contract for cleaning all your highway drains. I said, oh right. I said, can you tell me anything about it? Yes, he said, my contract says that I'm to spend no more than 1 minute on average at each drain. And I do this every so many months or whatever. And he said, some drains, I don't really need to worry. Others, I couldn't clean them in 5 minutes, let alone one. And he said the other thing is, he said the timing is not related to the leaf fall period. Now, we all know that the leaf fall period changes every year depending on the antecedent weather that we've had. So you can't always clear the drains in a particular place in this last week of September or third week of October or wherever, because the leaf fall is occurring at different times. And so self-help is very good, but the amount of leaf litter that you can get from a gully, and some of my neighbours, we've been clearing out leaf litter at the end of Orchard Way to clear the drains. You've then got to put this in your brown bin, which you're paying for, and you're filling up your brown bin with leaves which someone else perhaps should be clearing. But it is an element of self-help. Another element of self-help is the culvert that I mentioned at the end of Hedge End Wood. There were 2 occasions this winter when myself and 2 neighbours, I would say certainly put ourselves at considerable risk, because we were up to our waists in surging water trying to unblock the grill that the Environment Agency didn't have the manpower to do, and even though I'd phoned it through to the emergency centre, the level was rising so fast. When you have what's called a head loss, which is when the water coming in is much higher than the water going into the culvert, you've got to move the debris to level the 2 levels. And it was nearly over a foot higher on the incoming than it was going into the culvert. Once we cleared all the debris out, the level dropped dramatically, and therefore meant that the flowing was increased. So the reason we can't clear it without endangering ourselves is because the Environment Agency have put a lovely metal grill around the culvert with a padlock on it. We can only get to it by climbing around over the surging water and balancing on the end of the wall with a rake to pull the debris out. So sometimes self-help is really difficult to do. And the final thing I would talk about is 25 years ago, we had a lovely man called Frank Pedley, who was the Arun District Council Ditches Officer. And he was employed by the council to go round and, you know, you'd have reported your blocked ditch, and Frank Pedley would have come along and he'd have got someone to clear it out. He'd have found who the riparian owner was. And he worked until he retired, and he was never replaced. But he did a great job for those years he was in there. He was doing just the sort of thing you recommended, sir, going round, looking at ditches that were blocked, where farmers deliberately filled in a ditch so they could drive their tractor conveniently onto the film for the road. Knighton Lane, you'll notice it floods in a particular place there. That's because the lovely ditch is not continuous. The ditch stops and then continues. If you dug out that ditch half an hour with a JCB, you could solve that problem. So there's a lot of things. Self-help, yes, absolutely, but we can't all do it with self-help.
Thanks, John. Has anybody else got anything else they would like to add? Do we go on to antisocial behaviour? Do we want to? Do you really want to? Right. Obviously, a lot of the ewes that have come into, obviously, the village are using the transport network to get here. They've gone, actually, they have done angering. So they're moving from village to village. So we have obviously got police presence now, which is great. And we have obviously got 2 security guards that are going to be here for 21 days. It has settled down. It worries me that a lot of our older residents don't want to go out at night because it's horrible, and it is horrible. So what we need you to do is to report. Anything you see, report it, because then we can get more police on the ground. So that's where we are at the moment, but we are going to have it is, yeah.
Do you know why they come in village to village?
to steal.
Do we know where they're coming from?
We do. They're coming from Bognor, Worthing. Obviously, the girls were the worst rather than the boys. It was shocking, absolutely shocking. But hopefully we have got it in hand. We are working with the police, and we need you to report, you know, things that happen. And I'll speak. Sorry.
I just wanted to make a comment about housing development again, but it's also to do with youth. Whenever I go round and I walk my dog everywhere, all new housing developments have got a playground. And some of them are lovely, absolutely sweet little playgrounds aimed at kids somewhere between the age of 2 and 8. We've only got so many kids aged between 2 and 8 in this village. We need to be asking these people if they're spending money on our community in payment for them putting houses up. Let's have it for some older kids, things that our youth can do in the village that we can support rather than another playground. My little grandson, or our little grandson, sorry, is 5. Within 10 minutes, he can get to 6 playgrounds. 10-minute walk, he can get to 6 playgrounds, which is ridiculous. But what my 13-year-old grandson got nowhere to go. He sits on the wall with his mates in the garage, and then people see him as a problem, including us, to be fair.
Don't be beastly.
I really do hate speaking in public. But going back to Jonathan, the commissioner, and getting some money, bring back the youth clubs. Give them something to do. I was, back in the day, spoke to youth club, occupied me. That's what we need. We need more money for that.
Well said, Claire. Don't be daft. Well, it is, but of course, some of the community infrastructure levy actually goes elsewhere, not to where it's needed. So I think you know in section 106. So the Dandara estate was built in Fontwell. Seal went to Feltham Community Swimming Pool to do their changing rooms. So there was nothing given to the village, apart from a Muga, which is a big one up at Fontwell, and obviously a playground. So we need to be asking them what we want, or telling them what we want, not asking them. Yeah, what we need. So maybe we'll have put a wish list together of what we'd like to. Well said.
It's really hard to parent properly when you're both working full time to keep a roof over the head.
I appreciate that, but something's got to give at home.
I think every parent tries their best, but I think for the parenting age group, they're trying and trying and trying, and all that's going to give is their mental health, and that's going to affect their children. There is an empire that's being built on the backs of families. And that's why you've got antisocial behaviour. Mum and dad are working their asses off just to keep a roof over their head and food on the table. There is no money. 14 years of austerity. And it's crippled everyone. And Jonathan said it, the mental health, there's no support for anyone. And the children are running riot. and the parents are too knackered to do anything. What more can you say?
Yeah.
Is that... Thank you, Sue.
Yeah,
And
that's all right. Well, no, thank you to John.
thank you, everyone. That was very informative and really good debating.